You obeyed 7 commands this morning before your feet touched the floor. Your alarm told you when to rise. Your phone told you what mattered. The feed told you what to fear, what to like, what to ignore. And without thinking, you agreed. Not with words, with action, with attention. This is how control survives now, not with force, but with familiarity. You think you're free because you feel no pressure. But pressure isn't needed when you've been trained to crave the leash. Freedom isn't threatened by dictatorship anymore, it's softened by design. The music you hear, the ads you see, the news you consume, they don't just respond to your choices, they sculpt them. And when the sculpture feels like your own hand carved it, you forget there was ever a sculptor. You believe you're the author of your day, but how can you be when the headlines were written, the rhythms programmed, the questions pre-decided? Edward Bernays, the father of modern public relations, once said, "We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of." He meant it not as a warning, but as a strategy, and the strategy worked. Because you're not just being sold a product, you're being sold an identity. Your data is not being used to understand you, it's being used to predict you, to feed you what you'll say yes to before you even ask the question. And the tragedy is you think that yes is your voice. They didn't steal your autonomy, they invited it to a more comfortable room and let it fall asleep. The cage doesn't need to close if you decorate it yourself. So you scroll, you obey, you smile when the numbers go up, and still you call it choice. But choice without awareness is not freedom, it's choreography. And every step you take is part of a dance you were never taught, but somehow know by heart. Here's the truth most never say out loud. If you've never questioned who benefits from your attention, then your attention is being used. You never agreed to these rules, but you've been playing this game your whole life. And if you're not choosing your thoughts, then someone else already has. In 1962, a girl in a Tanzanian school began to laugh. No joke. No context, just laughter. Sharp, erratic, unsettling. Another girl joined. Then a dozen. Then the entire classroom. Teachers panicked. The laughter turned into fits, seizures, screams. It spread through villages. Hundreds were consumed. 14 schools shut down. There was no poison, no disease, just transmission. Emotion passed like wildfire, contagion without contact. This wasn't folklore, it was documented, diagnosed as mass psychogenic illness. But what they really discovered was this: when fear or joy or panic escapes one body, it can enter another. No words required. We call ourselves advanced, rational. But we're no less porous. We absorb each other's feelings through screens now. Through headlines, through scrolls. You open your feed, a stranger is enraged, another breaks down on camera. You feel it, a tightening in your chest, a drop in your stomach. You think this is empathy, but what if it's programming? In 2012, Facebook ran a silent experiment. They filtered nearly 700,000 timelines. Some users saw fewer happy posts, others fewer sad ones. The results? Those users began to mirror what they saw. Less joy, more negativity, more anger, more numbness. And no one noticed. That's not a glitch in the system. That is the system. We like to believe our emotions are ours. But emotions are easy to plant, easy to spread, easy to monetize. You are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to what someone decided you should see. A curated sadness, a recommended outrage, a viral despair. Because emotion isn't just contagious, it's profitable. The system knows your nervous system better than you do. And it knows logic debates, but emotion obeys. That's the first spell. Make you feel something strong enough, and you'll stop asking where it came from. Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "The observer is the observed." You don't watch the storm, you become it. And when someone else controls the weather, they control your world. We are drowning in feelings we didn't originate. We are marching to drums we never heard start. We are exhausted, not because we live too much, but because we've been absorbing everyone else's emotions without ever filtering them. That exhaustion. It's not your fault, but it is your warning. Because when your feelings are no longer your own, your behavior isn't either. And once your emotion is hijacked, your decisions are next. That's how control begins. Not with commands, but with a single silent feeling whispered into your body by someone you'll never meet. You thought you cancelled that subscription. You didn't. The system made sure you wouldn't. You clicked manage, then are you sure? Then what if we gave you 1 month free? Then tell us why you're leaving. And finally the button, small, grey, hidden, just beneath a big green stay with us, shining like relief. And you click, you'll say it was your decision. But how can a decision be free when it was designed to be difficult? That's the second spell, control by convenience. It's not about removing your choices. It's about making some so smooth you forget you're being steered and others so steep you stop before trying. There's a name for it, choice architecture. You're still choosing, but only within the frame someone else built. Everything has been tested, the color of buttons, the size of text, the delay before a pop-up appears. Entire teams exist not to help you decide, but to help you feel like you're deciding. Because the illusion of agency is far more effective than authority ever was. This is not theory, it's systematized, institutionalized, monetized. Grocery stores place high-margin items at eye level, not by accident. E-commerce sites pre-select faster shipping, not as a favor. Governments auto-enroll citizens into surveillance programs because opt-out fatigue is the new consent. In a study at Newcastle University, researchers placed a poster of human eyes above a communal coffee pot. Just eyes, no words. Donations to the honesty box tripled, not because of morality, but because of the suggestion of being seen. You don't need to be told what to do. You just need to feel watched, nudged, gently pulled in the right direction. That's how power works now, not through barriers, but through gravity. We've replaced oppression with design, coercion with comfort. And the more seamless the system becomes, the more invisible its influence feels. You call it personalization, but it's prediction. You call it habit, but it's choreography. The French philosopher Michel Foucault once wrote, "Where there is power, there is resistance, but never outside of it." Even your rebellion has been anticipated, modeled, managed. So you keep clicking, keep swiping, keep accepting. Not because you are weak, but because you've been made efficient. You are not browsing freely, you are being guided efficiently through a maze designed by people who profit from your belief in its openness. The second spell is the one that feels like ease. And once you accept it, they never have to push you again. You hold a warm drink in your hand, a stranger walks in. Something in your body softens. You trust them, like them, you don't know why. Later you learned the cup was the cause. That warmth traveled from your palm to your judgment, rewriting your perception before your mind ever joined the conversation. Same person, same room. Change the temperature and you change the truth. This is not a metaphor, it's a fact. In one Yale study, participants holding warm coffee rated others as more kind, generous, trustworthy. Those holding iced coffee described the same people as cold and distant. You didn't think your hand could rewrite your heart, but it does. And if your feelings can be framed by temperature, what else have you mistaken for intuition? That's the third spell, sensory suggestion. It doesn't scream, it whispers. High ceilings increase abstract thinking. Low lighting induces honesty. Blue light makes you scroll longer. Red buttons demand urgency. Scarcity triggers panic. Phrasing controls preference. You're more likely to say yes to 90% fat-free than 10% fat, even though they are the same thing. Reality is fixed, but perception is malleable. And perception is what behavior follows. We've come to believe our feelings are the final authority, but feelings are fragile. They are not always wrong, but they are always responsive. And they respond to context, to rhythm, to framing. The 20th century French philosopher Jacques Ellul warned, propaganda is not the distortion of truth. It is the shaping of perception in ways that truth is no longer distinguishable. The world isn't telling you what to think. It's shaping the space in which your thoughts arise. It's tuning the instruments of your nervous system so that what comes out feels authentic, but has already been scored. Your mood is not just your own. Your trust is not fully yours. Even your judgment has been farmed out to lighting, color, temperature, layout, pacing, and emotional timing. You walk into a room and your gut tells you something. But what if your gut was primed? What if the emotion you trusted was pre-installed? This is the spell most difficult to detect because it doesn't live in language. It lives in tone, in texture, in lighting, in music, in room temperature. And by the time it reaches your mind, it already feels like you. But feelings born from framing are not freedom. They are echoes of an arrangement. And unless you pause, unless you ask, who built this moment I'm reacting to? You will keep mistaking the performance for your own voice. The third spell is the most dangerous, because once you believe the feeling is yours, you'll follow it anywhere. There's a story from the Mahabharata, a tale of honor, strategy, and ruin. Yudhishthira, the righteous prince, sits at a gaming table. Across from him, his uncle Shakuni. The dice look ordinary, the rules seem fair. Yudhishthira, bound by duty, accepts the game. But the dice are rigged. The game is a trap. And his greatest flaw isn't greed, it's faith. Faith in the illusion of fairness. He loses everything. His kingdom, his brothers, even his wife. Not because he didn't play well, but because he didn't question the game. You don't have to live in an ancient epic to be Yudhishthira. You just have to walk through a world where every scroll, every swipe, every click is part of a game that rewards compliance and punishes pause. You follow the rules. Show up, smile when told, stay inside the rails. And slowly, the reward becomes internalized. You feel pride for behaving, for being efficient, for playing along. But here's the hidden cost. You become someone who no longer remembers what it's like to choose. Erich Fromm called it the escape from freedom. The moment when autonomy becomes too heavy, too uncertain, too lonely, and we trade it for structure, for safety, for applause. So we adopt the traits most celebrated. We speak in the language of the algorithm. We mimic the tone of the room. We become agreeable, adaptable, acceptable. And in doing so, we disappear. We don't even notice the disappearance, because we're still being rewarded, still being seen, still being liked. But recognition is not the same as being known, and applause is not the same as being free. This is the moment the mask fuses to the face, where the performance becomes so seamless even you forget it's not you. You begin to feel tired, unnamed exhaustion, decision fatigue, emotional burnout. You think it's life, work, the times. But what if it's not any of those? What if it's the cumulative weight of 1,000 unchosen choices? Every yes you said without thinking. Every emotion you absorbed without asking. Every identity you wore because it came with validation. That kind of exhaustion is not from effort, it's from erosion. And the longer you live inside a system that benefits from your unawareness, the more it will convince you that questioning it is selfish, that rebellion is rude, that stillness is laziness, that curiosity is danger. So you obey, not because you're weak, but because you were trained to be good. And here lies the great tragedy, not that people are manipulated, but that they mistake it for virtue. The system doesn't just win when you obey, it wins when you thank it for the privilege. It starts quietly, not with a speech, not with a protest, but with a flicker of discomfort, a thought that doesn't quite fit, a hesitation before the next scroll. You hear something and you don't react the way you used to. That's how it begins, with noticing. Noticing the pause before your agreement, the small space between stimulus and response. The whisper that says, wait, is this mine? At first it's disorienting. You look at your life like a set you didn't design. The roles you play, the routines you follow, the preferences that feel suspiciously convenient. And then it hits you. So much of what you thought was you was actually a reflection of the system around you. But now you're facing the mirror. You start to feel the invisible strings, the nudges, the designs. You trace the path backward, from emotion to headline, from desire to algorithm, from thought to trigger. And somewhere in that tracing you reclaim something. Not everything, not right away, but something, a breath, a boundary, a question. You don't rage, you don't explode. You just unplug, even if only for a moment. And in that moment something opens, a small rebellion. A sacred pause, a choice that wasn't preloaded. This is what freedom really feels like, not loud, not triumphant, but unfamiliar. Strange, almost fragile, because true freedom isn't comfort. It's clarity, it's waking up in a world that profits from your sleep and deciding to keep your eyes open anyway. The sacred texts call this remembering. The mystics call it seeing, the philosophers call it individuation. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just you in a quiet room asking yourself, what if I stopped playing the role I was given and started writing my own? And when that voice comes, soft but steady, it doesn't just change your mind. It changes your posture, your presence, your life. Because now you're not reacting, you're responding. You're not scrolling, you're seeing. You're not performing, you're becoming. And if this mirror has shown you something you weren't supposed to see, don't turn away. Share it, speak it, live it. Because if you were strong enough to sleepwalk this far, you are more than strong enough to wake up. So we've named them. The first reason people stay, persona, they like your mask. The second, projection, they like their reflection in you. The third, utility, they like the function you serve. But what about the ones who stay after all that breaks? What about the ones who don't flinch when the mask slips, the mirror cracks and the service ends? Carl Jung believed that wholeness isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. And realness begins where performance ends. He spoke of the individuation process, a slow, often painful path toward the authentic self. Not the persona you've crafted, not the shadow you've buried, but the whole of who you are when there's nothing left to prove. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. You meet someone who doesn't want your shine. They want your stillness. They don't want your solutions. They want your presence. They aren't drawn to your mask, your reflection, or your usefulness. They are drawn to your being. There's a word for this. One that doesn't often show up in psychology textbooks, but belongs in the human soul. It's an Irish term, anam cara, soul friend. The one who sees behind your eyes and says, you don't have to explain. The one who doesn't celebrate you for your light, but honors you for your depth. There's a story, real, quiet, unshareable in headlines. A hospice nurse once told it. An old man was dying alone. No visitors, no family, his room was silent. One day, another elderly man arrived and sat beside him, said nothing, stayed for hours, then returned the next day and the next. The nurse asked, "Are you his brother?" "No," the man said. "We used to eat lunch together in school. He never said much." I just figured maybe someone should sit with him now. That's not a friendship, that's not a favor, that's recognition. You don't get there through likability. You don't earn it through performance. You don't attract it by becoming who others need. You arrive at it when you've stopped hiding, when the applause dies down, when you're no longer useful and someone still stays. Rumi said, be with those who help your being, not your brand, not your hustle, not your best self. Your being, the trembling part, the unpolished part, the inconvenient, honest, aching part. This is where real connection lives. And yes, it's rare, because it doesn't arrive until you've lost everything that made you likable. It comes when you have nothing left to sell, nothing to perform, nothing to prove. And someone looks at you and doesn't say, you're amazing. They say, you're here and that's enough. So if you've known that kind of person, tell them. If you haven't, become that kind of person, not just for others, for yourself. Because when you learn to stay, even when the light goes out, you become the one you've always been searching for. And the ones who find you there, they won't be drawn by what you offer. They'll be drawn by who you are when the offering ends. That's not reason 4. That's the reason beyond the reasons. It's the only one that lasts. Let's step back. You've seen now why most people stay. They're drawn to your persona, the agreeable mask. They're pulled toward their own projection, the mirror they mistake for love. Or they rely on your utility, the comfort you provide without ever asking for anything in return. But there's something deeper that holds all of this in place. Something that keeps the performance going long after your spirit starts to crack. It's this: being liked is not the same as being safe. But for many people, especially those shaped by rejection, volatility, or childhood neglect, being liked becomes a form of self-defense. You learn early that conflict is dangerous, that your needs are too much, that your emotions get you punished, or worse, ignored, so you adapt. You smile before they ask. You apologize before they're even mad. You anticipate everyone's needs so you never become a burden. And then they say you're so easy to be around. That's not a compliment. That's the echo of your trauma performing for their comfort. Carl Jung called this self-betrayal a splitting of the psyche, when parts of you are exiled in order to survive. You cut off your boundaries to avoid abandonment. You silence your voice to stay in the room. You become likable at the cost of becoming invisible. It's not conscious, it's patterned. It becomes your identity. And the paradox is devastating. The more likable you are, the less you're allowed to be real. Because if everyone loves the version of you that never complains, never asks for anything, never disrupts the flow, what happens when you finally speak up? They say you've changed, you've become cold. You're no longer fun to be around, but you didn't change, you just stopped editing. You stopped prioritizing other people's comfort over your own pain. And in doing so, you discovered the price of approval. You only belong as long as you're easy. You only get invited if you never bring your whole self. You only stay loved if you stay small. But that's the invisible agreement you never signed. So ask yourself, how many people love you for your silence? How many love you because you make them feel better while slowly disappearing yourself? The truth? To be fully loved, you must be willing to be disliked. To be truly seen, you must risk being too much. To belong, you must stop earning your seat. This is the line few people ever cross because it's terrifying. But the other side of that line is where everything real begins. In the final chapter, we'll return to the 3 reasons. But we won't stop there. Because once you've named the illusions, you get to choose something else. Something rare, something truer, something worth staying for. So now you know the 3 reasons people hang out with you. 1, persona. They like your mask. The curated, agreeable version of you that makes them feel safe and seen but keeps your truth buried. 2, projection. They like what you represent. The mirror you unknowingly hold up that reflects their longings, their wounds, their forgotten selves. 3, utility. They like what you give, your energy, your empathy. Your effort, your emotional labor disguised as love. Each of these reasons can feel like connection. But none of them are intimacy. They're attachments, contracts, unspoken agreements that work until they don't. And the moment you stop performing, when you're tired, messy, sad, unavailable, those attachments start to fray. Because they were never here for the full you. Just the parts they could use, reflect, or admire. But then there are the ones who stay. The ones who show up when there's nothing to offer, no charm, no smile, no wisdom, no strength. They stay in the silence. They stay in the mess. They stay not because you're valuable, but because you're real. That is not one of the 3 reasons. That is the one reason that changes everything. The reason beyond the reasons, call it recognition, call it soul resonance. Call it what Jung hinted at in his final years, the meeting of 2 fully integrated beings, no masks, no projections, no roles to play. Just presence, just being, just you. So now ask yourself, who have you been trying to earn? Whose approval are you still addicted to? And what part of yourself have you silenced to stay likable? Because the person you've been hiding, the one who's too much, too honest, too emotional, too tired, that's the one someone's been waiting to meet. And if this made you feel something, maybe send it to the one who stayed. Or post it for the one who never asked you to be smaller. And if no one comes to mind, then maybe, just maybe, you've always been the one staying for everyone else. It's time to come home. Not to your persona, not to your mirror. Not to your usefulness, but to yourself. Because the person worth being loved was never the version of you they liked. It was the one who stayed, even when no one else did.